Starting off with Apple, they have just announced an event, kind of like a shock announcement or surprise announcement that's happening less than a week from today. So the event will be on Monday, October 30th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, which works out to be 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is very atypical for Apple. Usually it's, something in the morning, I guess usually around 1 o'clock Eastern time. But the event is titled Scary Fast. So I'm guessing they're doing a little play on it's Halloween time. They're doing it in the evening, it's the witching hours, so it seems like it's going to be an event focused on Macs. If you go on the actual Apple website, so the logo for the event is just a typical Apple logo. But if you go on their actual website, that Apple logo morphs into an Apple Finder symbol, like a little Finder face, I guess is what it's called. Seems like it's going to be about Macs. People have been saying, for the past 2 years that the iMac needs an update. It's still on the M1 chip, right? And now we've come out with the M1 Pros, M2s, M2 Pros. I mean, we're pretty much in time for M3. So everyone's saying that this is probably going to be a Mac event with products that get M3s in them. I don't think it's going to be M3 Pro simply because we got the M2 Pro and M2 Max MacBooks in January. So I don't think, within the same calendar year, I don't think they would just go and replace those. Or who knows, maybe they just bring the M3 Pro to the 24-inch iMac, or maybe even like an iMac Pro. But yeah, that device has been long overdue for an upgrade. I think maybe we get the 13-inch MacBook Air upgraded, maybe the 15-inch MacBook Air. And, they've continued to upgrade the old unibody 13-inch MacBook Pros. I really don't think that they do. Hopefully, or even if they do, just like remove the touch bar. No one cares about the touch bar anymore. I know you did a lot of R&D and you probably got a lot of parts left over, but like at this point, just do away with it. You can have, even though it's weird to say, an entry level MacBook Pro, right? For an M3, the even more entry level MacBook Air, and then a 24-inch iMac. But from what you've seen from this event and kind of how Apple does their events, what do you expect to come from this?
Yeah, my expectations are kind of odd right now because I think before the podcast I mentioned like there was some rumors that the M3 refresh of Macs was going to be delayed until next year. And although, November time, although this is happening on Halloween Eve, is generally when they do a Mac event near the end of the year, I kind of find it hard to believe that they would do an event in October and then say, oh, these new PCs aren't coming out until 2024. That's not the way Apple works. Generally, it'll
Yeah.
be out within the next month, if not a few weeks. So, yeah, it seems like those earlier rumors that were reported on, I believe they were from Twitter, an account called @TechReeve, I think it was. But this was a rumor that was reported on by Macworld and Forbes and many others that, I don't know how accurate this leaker is, if maybe this is maybe the first time they've come on the scene. I haven't heard of them in the past. But there was quite a few people reporting on the fact that M3 would be delayed. But you brought up a really good point. The iMac is the machine that I want to see updated the most. I actually really like that machine. I know a lot of people don't. I think it looks really cool. I like the design. I have a lot of issues with it, including the base SKU of that version, or the base version of that machine, I think is a ripoff. It only has 2 ports on it, and for a desktop, that's not acceptable. So yeah, I would love to see that machine get updated. I don't think we'll get anything like, I hope we get, the base level getting at least 4 ports, but I don't think we'll get a larger size, although a lot of people have been wanting a 27-inch version of the iMac. I would love to see that as well. I don't think that's something we'll get. Maybe it's just a refresh with that same design, considering that is a pretty new design that they just brought out a few years ago. But yeah, I think that's the one that needs it the most. And although I have been a defender of the Touch Bar Mac Pro, yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't be surprised if that thing leaves the lineup. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't get updated at all and then eventually just phases up quietly. But if they do update it, yeah, they need to do something with it to make it a little bit more compelling. I would personally just like to see them drop the price a few $100s. I think that would be a great middle ground between the MacBook Air and the full-fledged MacBook Pros. I don't think they'll do that, but especially with everything getting more expensive these days, I don't know if Apple's willing to lower the price. That's something I would like to see them do. But yeah,
Mm.
it would be interesting to see if they refresh. I don't think they've done this yet, where they refresh the entire lineup to the new processor. Usually they do it staggered. I would love for them to be like, hey, the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, iMac, Mac Mini, Mac Studio, and maybe Mac Pro all get an M3 version. Maybe not the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro because those are going to be not base level versions of that chip. So maybe they just bring out the M3 and the M3 Pro. But yeah, I don't know. Is there a machine, in your opinion, that needs an update the most, or one that would intrigue you the most in terms of getting an M3 bump? And do you think there's any chance that they do this event without an M3, considering the leaks that M3 was delayed until 2024?
The the one that I think needs the biggest upgrade, I'd agree, is the
Mm.
iMac. Right? It's kind of crazy that that is still on an M1 chip, so so far away from when it came out. Everything has gotten an upgrade. The MacBook Air even got a redesign, and that's still running M1. So I think that needs the most upgrade. The thing that I'd be most interested in, it's always either the Mac Mini or the MacBook Air.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, the rumors and everyone is saying that, yeah, M3 chips have been delayed, but I really don't see them having an event, just to put M2 in the iMac.
Yeah.
Because really everything else has M2 already, or if not M2 Pro. So if this entire event is just about upgrading the iMac to M2, not even M3, I mean, that could have been a press release, to be
Yeah.
honest. Right? And that's the thing. They did a press release a couple weeks ago or even last week about the new Apple Pencil that they came out with, which is sort of like the worst version of an Apple Pencil in Apple's certified stuff. And that was just a press release. So if this is only getting an update to M2 and that's all, this really should just be a press release. But the fact that they're having an actual event and the fact that the event's at 8 p.m., it's like there has to be more to this
Yeah.
than just an M2 Pro. No, I'm sorry, just an M2 and an iMac. Even if it was an M2 Pro or an M2 Max, an M2 Max and an iMac would be kind of ridiculous. That'd have to be an iMac Pro. But even if it's just the M2 Pro, you do not need a whole event for this. So the fact that they are doing an event, I like it has to be more than that, right? Like it has to be.
Yeah.
You think? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I want to agree. It's just weird that those. See, if it was just someone randomly who was posting that delay on Twitter and no one covered it, I would be like, okay, well, that person was just clearly wrong. So it's going to be interesting because this could potentially be a turnaround for leaks not being as credible. If yeah, we actually do get M3 this year, that could be. I know Apple has been trying to combat leaks for quite a while, and if they can say, hey, we gave false information to this one person, we can trace back to who gave them that information and kind of stomp out leaks. I don't know how seriously they're taking that, but if that is something they're taking seriously, that could be quite interesting as well. But yeah, the event will be interesting to see what they do, and I do agree with you because they used the Finder image. It's most definitely going to be about the Mac, so I don't know what else it could potentially be about. But you did bring up something interesting there that was kind of in one of my topics for rapid fire, but I guess we could just talk about it briefly now. This new Apple Pencil. It's really, really strange. So they have the new iPad, the new base level iPad that has USB-C, but it was still only compatible with the Apple Pencil 1. So it had to ship with a Lightning to USB-C adapter. Apple is trying to go all the way to USB-C. So they released this new pencil that can magnetically attach to, the Pro and Air level iPads, but can't charge. It can only charge via a USB-C port at the back end of the device. It's weird. It supports some of the features of the Apple Pencil 2, like hover, but the one feature it doesn't support is pressure sensitivity. I know you use an Apple Pencil, and I'm kind of curious. It is cheaper than the Apple Pencil 2. It shares a bit of the design, but has less features than the Apple Pencil 1, or less useful features than the Apple Pencil 1. How do you feel about this device at all? Would you be interested in it? I don't know if you use pressure sensitivity. Is that something that you'd be willing to save money on in a future Apple Pencil if it's like, okay, it can do everything else the Apple Pencil 2 can, except charge magnetically and use pressure sensitivity? Or are you as baffled by this new device as much of the internet has been?
No, yeah, I'm baffled. I would not recommend this to anyone. I mean, even for the simple thing of charging it magnetically and pairing it magnetically, because it doesn't pair that way
Yeah,
either.
you have to pair it via USB-C.
Like you have to pair over, yeah. So it's very inconvenient. I don't understand why they even released this. Um, yes, okay, the fact that there's some pared down or some toned down features like the pressure sensitivity. Okay, yeah, maybe not everyone uses that. I don't even think I use it to its full extent. But I would say that of all the features to keep, the magnetic charging and pairing is like the most basic one,
Mm-hmm.
right? The fact that it supports hover, right? But you can't charge it with your iPad, that it can still magnetically connect to, right? Which doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I think this is a very useless upgrade. I don't get why Apple would do this, but I mean, hey, Apple's an Apple,
Yeah.
so
If anything, it probably just would have made more sense to update the Apple Pencil 1 with USB-C, so you didn't need the
yeah,
adapter.
yeah, yeah. I really don't get why they're still selling the Apple Pencil one either, because pretty much all of their new iPads have USB C, don't they? Or
Yeah.
does the 10th gen still have?
The ninth gen still has Lightning, but the 10th gen has USB-C. So there's that base level one that they're still selling with the old design is the
Mhm.
only iPad left that has Lightning, which is interesting. So I guess they're keeping it there just for that. But yeah,
But you could even just use a dongle, right?
exactly.
Even though you shouldn't need a dongle to use your Apple Pencil, but you could even just switch everything to USB C. And then, hey, if you still have the ninth gen iPad, or if you have the ninth gen iPad and you want to use a pencil, just use a dongle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because all of your iPads except for that one use USB-C. So you're holding out this archaic port just for one of the 7 iPads that you make.
Yeah.
So
And that's the thing too, is if they continue to make this thing just because, okay, it's the lowest value one, it's the most entry level. So if people still want to get an iPad, but they don't want, the edge, or I was gonna say edge to edge screen. It's definitely not edge to edge. There's thick bezels around these things. But if you don't want, the newer design, if you don't want, an M1 chip or an M2 or whatever chip is inside, and you just want the old fashioned iPad, then yeah, that makes sense to keep that in the lineup. But one, you could definitely afford to put USB C in it. And I think legally they kind of have to now, don't they?
yeah, I would
Yeah,
imagine so with the
legally they
European.
have to.
Yeah.
And two, dongles.
Yeah.
Um,
One last thing I want to bring up before we move on from this event that's coming up. So we mentioned the iMac, which is a device that I always thought really needed an update, but we were just talking about iPads. And iMac might be my favorite Mac in terms of design. My favorite iPad in terms of design is the iPad mini, and that hasn't gotten an update in ages. Do you ever think we see an M series processor in the iPad mini? Or maybe we get an updated A series chip, like maybe the new 16 Pro or whatever we're on?
17 Pro?
17 Pro?
I think it's a
Or
17 Pro.
do you think they just forget about this thing? Because it's still running the A15 Bionic at this point.
I think they update it. I don't see them bringing an M series chip. Although, hey, maybe they put the M1 in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it doesn't make sense by the time they update it, we'll be on M3. It doesn't make sense to put an M3 chip in an iPad mini. Like it's already stretching the imagination to have an M3, or not yet, but have an M series chip in a full size iPad, even iPad Pro. So yeah, for that to go to an iPad mini, which is even more limited in what it could do, doesn't make any sense. I could see them doing an M1 just because, okay, all of our iPads are going to be on M series chips in the future, and just to make sure that this thing, you could use this thing for longer, and it's going to continue to get updates and security updates and software updates. I could see them put in an M1 chip in it.
Yeah.
Maybe an A17 Pro, but just the fact that they added Pro to the end of their A17 and it's no longer like an A17 Bionic, it makes it seem like they're going to try and make a distinction between, a Pro iPhone chip and a non-Pro iPhone chip. And if they do that, I don't think they would put a Pro iPhone chip in an iPad that isn't a Pro.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really good point there, because I think what they did really well with the naming of the iPhones this year, maybe in a future podcast we'll talk about the new iPhone 15s, 15 Pros and stuff like that, is I think this now allows them to next year, if they're going to be doing an 18 chip, they can have an 18 base level for their base level iPhones and an A18 Pro for the Pro iPhones, so that you're not running two different generations of chips. That kind of makes things a little difficult in terms of recommendations each year.
Yeah, that's definitely something I thought that they might do eventually too. And this makes more sense, even though they should have the same chip anyways.
Yeah.
Right? And between the A18 Pro and the A18, there's going to be like an extra GPU core maybe, and some extra RAM, if anything. So there's not going to be that substantial of an upgrade, or that substantial of a difference, I imagine. But yeah, it makes more sense that they'd be running at least the same architecture of chip.
Yeah.
If anything, right? Because this is the A17 is a 3 nanometer chip, and the A16 is still on a 4 nanometer, which isn't the biggest difference. It's not a huge difference, but yeah, it makes more sense. But also, we're talking about Apple making sense. So.
Making sense.
And
when they just released the new Apple Pencil.
Yeah. So who knows if they care about making sense to anybody else but themselves.